For most film and television experiences, I imagine it seems like an editor's job is to essentially act as a ghost and keep things moving in a consistent flow where viewers are sucked up into the narrative and are not noticing the technical aspects. However,
Yes.
for still, editing is such an important element of this film's presentation because you're weaving in moments from Michael J. Fox's work, film and television, and giving these scenes new context by making them appear as if they are dramatizations of what Michael J. Fox is saying, and as he's
Yeah.
recounting his story in present day. I
Mm.
imagine it was a complicated process. Obviously, it has to start with Mr. Fox's sit down interview recounting his story and presenting the
Yeah.
reality of his everyday life
Yep.
from then until now.
Yep.
So, what was your process? When did it become apparent that scenes from his films had this bizarre connection to the words and emotions he was sharing in the present time?
It's a good question. It's a big question. It's a good one.
Yeah, very loaded.
You know what it's funny you say that editing is the kind of you're the ghost, and it's so true. And I said it for years. I was like, an editor is like should be like a good editor is like a good referee in a soccer match. You just don't want to notice that person. He just keeps the game ticking over.
Yeah.
Once you start to see the ref, you know his name, and you're out. It becomes less about the game and more about him. And so I've never wanted the kind of showy off editing. A few projects I've done, though, the ones that have done well, the editing has been kind of not at the forefront, but a pretty noticeable. This more than anything, the process was we started with his audiobooks. That's where we began. He'd written amazing books. I mean, Lucky Man, especially. I mean, I read that years ago, but when I started the project, Davis had there was no material. Normally I come on, there's 50, 60% that's shot. There's nothing. The only thing we had was archive. So there was a part of us that thought, let's tell this film entirely through archive. There's so much of it. Like, it can be a bit of a vanity project for an editor. You're like, I can do this, I can pull this off, and it'll be, people will say he did this with archive only. Wow. But the difference in something incredible like Senna is you got this guy, Michael J. Fox, who is just an incredible human being and a brilliant storyteller. So, but we didn't think we were going to use him initially. We didn't want to use any talking heads interviews.
Mhm.
So we assumed, well, we won't interview Michael in that way either. We'll figure out how to use him in some way. We'll use his archive, his audiobooks, maybe some verite. So we used his audiobooks initially. I cut
Mhm.
it from there was like 20 hours of audiobooks, and I cut it down to an hour and a half. Got on a
Mhm.
plane. I did that in London. Got on a plane, went to LA, sat with Davis and Will Cohen, a writer, and a producer, and Annette Marion, the other producer, and we sat in a room and we just listened to the audiobooks. And then I'd compiled 2, 3 hours, just a taste of his archive from his life, not his movies, not his TV shows, but interviews that he'd done, his home movie footage, red carpet stuff, behind the scenes.
Mhm.
And so we're like, okay, how can we merge these two together? So we did, and we just kind of made a rough cut. It was like good, it wasn't amazing, but it was, you could put it on TV and you could watch it and it would be watchable. Davis then said, let's interview Michael and see what he gives us. Just he had an instinct, let's do this. Um he didn't tell me at the time because he wanted me to watch that interview on my own with no preconceived ideas. And he
Mhm.
said, just watch it, see what you think. I mean, I watched the whole. I mean, normally I'll watch an interview for 20 minutes and take a break, and watch 20 more minutes, take a break. 4 hours, whoosh, one go. I couldn't stop watching it. I was like bewitched. This is the best interview I've ever seen in a documentary that I worked on. Um, just so funny and honest and open. It was like, this is the movie. This is what we need to use as a foundation for the documentary. Let's be as creative as we want to be, but let's
Mhm.
use this as our kind of foundation, and it'll always come back to this interview space. And this isn't. And the other thing which was great was that camera kept rolling. It was one shot; it never moved, but it just kept rolling for 4 hours. And the guys were changing cards, but they would do it immediately. The gold of that interview is the stuff that happens around the questions when he gets up and takes the picture off the wall. It's Tracy, or when he takes the cinemat and shows you his hands slowing down, and it's the stuff that I would normally cut out. that was the magic of the movie. So that stuff was all great. But then it was like, we've still got these gaps. We've got this amazing interview, an amazing story that he has told us in audiobook with all this incredible archive. How do we match that interview? What do we do? And Davis said it. He said, we got to do something unique here because he's such a unique character. I'm a huge Michael J. Fox fan and have been my whole life. Back to the Future, I'm not ashamed to say, my favorite movie. And I wanted to play it safe. I'm like, I don't know if we should do this. I don't know if we should be this creative and take these many risks and take these, swing this big, because do we need to? And we could play it safe and it would still be a good movie. And Davis said, nah, go for it. Whatever you do, go come up with something. So I spent 8 weeks going through all his movies, all his TV shows, and the assistant editors came on board and started helping me. We went through everything. And one day I was in the edit. I was in London on my own at this point. I knew the rough structure of the movie. I knew the idea that he got the script for Back to the Future when he was shooting Family Ties. And then I saw a shot from Bright Lights, Big City where he's flicking through a piece of paper.
Yeah.
And by chance I had Spotify next to me on my edit suite. And I just started playing the Back to the Future music and that little tinkle at the start. And when he turns the page and I used the music from Back to the Future and thought, okay, could we do this? Could we play with his movies and use it as kind of faux verite? I put his audiobook recording in where he says, I got the script for Back to, sorry, there's a really bad accent of Michael J. Fox, but he was talking about a movie with Steven Spielberg and he opens up. Anyway, I cut that scene together. I loved it because I'm a Back to the Future fan, I'm a movie geek, and I was like, this is great for me. The audience will more than likely will reject something like this.
I sent it to Davis, and he was in LA, and he used to get my material at night. So I go to bed and woke up in the morning, went into the edit suite, and I just had a text from Davis saying, "Call me." And I was like, I'm either getting fired or we're going for this. Like, so he said, this is the grammar of the movie. This is the second thing, the second storytelling device, next to Michael's interview. And what you're going to do is you're going to do this, you're going to do this a lot, and we'll fail, we'll try stuff, it's not going to work. And sometimes it will, and sometimes it won't, but let's not fear it and go for it and see how, just let's see where it takes us. And that's how it started. So we had our 3 storytelling devices, the archive, his interview, and then I guess that's what we call it, full archive or full verite, and from using his movies in a slightly different way,
I think what I'm most interested in, and you touched on it a little, is just that process of like combing through his work and then just having those moments when you're watching his films or his television episodes and you're just like, that just seems so predestined almost for what we're doing here. Like it just so like it's like this universal poetic thing that's going on here, and I can't quite make sense of that. And so what is that feeling like when those moments occur where some of them they're just like, oh, that's a cool little coincidence, but then there are moments that almost feel like otherworldly in a way too?
Yeah. I still can't make sense of it. And sometimes I can't even remember in the edit when we found that clip.
Yeah.
Because it happened so many times, I started taking it for granted. Then I was like, "Oh, cool! There's another one. Put that in and send it to the team." Like, what? Like, where did you get this clip? I have a good knack because I work so much that I've gotten much better at watching a lot of material and remembering the shot. I do it in movies too. All my life, anytime I watch a movie, I can recall a lot of shots, specific shots from films, and I don't know what it is. So I said to Davis, if you give me 8 weeks, I'll go through everything, and I'll be able to retain a lot of it. And we had listened to the audiobooks at that point, so I knew story beats. So then I would start to see shots in that material, and it's like that may work there, that may work there. So the shots were easy. That was kind of cool because we were kind of. Is the dialogue? It was when the dialogue started to pop out at you. You're like, there's a shot with Tracy and Michael in Bright Lights, Big City when they're walking down the street, and she says in the movie, she says, "Oh, I guess I'm supposed to be pretty impressed by you." And it's just before they kiss, and they have this conversation, but the conversation speaks so much to what he's talking about in his voiceover, which is, "I was trying to impress her," and You know, she was my reality, and I didn't need, you know, she didn't need to be impressed by me, and this, and it just, once you figured out one or two of them, then you're like, okay, we can't just do this once or twice. Like, this has to be consistent. And it was just so weird. It was just, you would just come across it. What's great is Michael would always look very young in the 80s and the early stage of the 90s too. So you can jump around in movies and use different clips, and he would never look too old or too young. And I think somebody kind of nailed it in the New York Times. They said, you're making a Michael J. Fox movie from Michael J. Fox movies, and that's kind of what we did. And it was a lot of fun because you got to watch his movies a lot. But what's great then is that and it was only, you only kind of figure this stuff out after you do it, and people say it to you, and you go, yeah, okay. But it's almost like, have you ever seen a film called Boyhood, where you're watching this person grow older throughout the movie, but organically, and it's the same here. You know, if you're to do that, we were to use it. You see it with archive all the time, but to be shot kind of in such a cinematic and filmic way, and to see that progression over the course of a movie was really cool. Like, you know, it was a really cool thing to do, but always in service of the story. That was the thing. That was the number one rule. You could get addicted to it and think, we want to do this all the time, but you have to be careful not to let this overshadow the movie and overshadow his interview. And that's when I need to start reining it in. And like you say, I was never going to be a ghost in this movie because there's a lot of editing, and editing becomes a part of it. Right. But I need to take it and you'll see as the film progresses, I do take a step back, and the rhythm of the film starts to slow down, as does his character in the movie. And I get kicked out of the room basically, like, and it's just Michael J. Fox, you know. So yeah.
I guess that what's fitting is that during the section with Tracy that you were talking about, the romance section, you have the song Strange Magic playing. So that's just the two words that kind of describe this whole experience.
Very good.
Yeah. I know we're about to run out of time, but I wanted to shine the spotlight a little bit on this. What is, in your opinion, like a subtle art of editing that you think doesn't get enough attention? I thought it was interesting. You were talking about the rhythm of the film changing. There's all these like transitional moments and tone and things like that, or even clips between moments where you have to make it feel fluid. I was just curious if you had an opinion on any of that, like what may be the subtle art of editing.
That's it. That's the kind of thing with editors, is that the harder you work at it, the less you're you can be noticed. You know, it's like rhythm is invisible. It should be. It should, you know, you should just feel it, and you shouldn't notice it. And you know, you don't dance to a song and start thinking, I like the rhythm of this. You just do it, and everything's the same. And with this, it was the same. You know, what I loved in this is that we tried to do that, which is when his life is frantic. You know, the scenes in the past are very frantic and very fast, and the rhythm of those are, it's very clear. They do start to slow down as the film. I would make each scene, as you progress throughout, his scenes would get slightly slower. The scenes in the present day are just constant. They're at the same rhythm the whole way through the movie. And so the scenes from the past, the rhythm of those eventually catch up. Sorry, I'm using my hands here, but that's what I do. The rhythm of the scenes in the past eventually start to match the rhythm of the present day scenes, because that's what he finds, is that it's still the film, the rhythm isn't still. You kind of, but you get what I'm saying. You get to a point where in the film where the past and the present meet, and there's a kind of there is a stillness about the way we cut those. And Davis was very clever with the way he shot those scenes in the present day. He step back, the camera never moves. It's one or two maybe angles, but the camera, you don't see any movement. And his point was, this is what life is like. You don't get a camera moving around, and let's see them as, you know, and if Michael's moving a lot, let's see that, and the camera should never take away from that moment. If he's struggling to stay still, let's see that, and not, the camera shouldn't hide it. Or so that stuff was what I love to kind of figure out in an edit. But like you said, you know, the audience don't notice it, but well, I should give them more credit, but they can feel it, and if the film works, which is, it's great that, you know, we worked hard to get it right and to get the rhythms right.